Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Madison Realty Capital, Capital One Bank, New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Sterling National Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Customers Bank, AmTrust Title, Ariel Property Advisors. Additional funding has been provided by AVR Realty Company, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Mortgage Lending, Citizens Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Colliers International NYC, Collins Building Services, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handler Real Estate Organization, Handro Properties, Hodges Ward Elliott, Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Matone Group, Mercantile Bank, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Stonehenge NYC, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Meringoff Family Foundation, the Moynihan Organization, Moynihan Capital Partners, and these friends.
So we're in 2018. We've had 10 good years. Is it a tough time in the real estate business? I don't know. So today I assembled these three dynamic female executives to provide their insight on where they see the real estate market and also tell us how they got involved with the real estate market. My guests include Toby Moskovits, who is the founder and COO of Heritage Equities.
That's correct.
Regina Myer, who's the president of the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership. And last but not least, MaryAnne Gilmartin, who is a principal and CEO at L&L Mag. Okay, so we were saying before, I always want to find out how people and why they got involved with the real estate business. How did the girl who grew up in Brooklyn decide that she was going to get involved with the real estate? She graduated high school at a young age. Tell me a little bit of how that happened.
So I think it's a couple of things. First of all, sometimes in life it's about opening your eyes and seeing opportunity when it starts to knock. In 2008, I knew somebody.
No, let's go back.
Oh, from the beginning.
2008.
Oh, from the
I want to
beginning.
go back to the beginning.
Okay.
I mean, I did Regina's life story. She'll tell us a little bit.
Okay.
And MaryAnne will tell us about her life.
So I graduated from high school when I was, like I mentioned, when I was about almost just turned 17. I went to Touro College, like every nice Jewish girl who grew up in my community. And
So
then
you grew up in the Flatbush section?
I grew up in Flatbush, right near Ocean Parkway. Spent my childhood driving down Ocean Parkway to the boardwalk in the days when they still let you drive your bikes.
Now, but
up
your
and down.
dad was involved with the apparel schmutta business?
My dad was, not only was he involved in the apparel business, but to jump forward, my earliest interaction and my earliest visits to Williamsburg was when I was a child. My family had a business on the waterfront in Kent and North 10th Street. It was a factory they probably should have bought, but just rented. And because they needed manpower to help them repair Army uniforms, my grandfather, who spoke Polish, decided to put himself in what they used to call it Greenpoint, but now I know it's Williamsburg. So I spent my childhood riding the high-low and eating at Green's Kukash, Rugelach, in a couple blocks south. And then what happened over the first 10 years of my career is I became a venture capitalist. I was pre-med undergrad at Touro College, decided I didn't want to be in the medical industry, thankfully, and ended up studying at Bar-Ilan University in Israel just when the tech industry was taking off. And I got my first job after business school working for a venture fund my direct boss was a guy who now everyone in real estate knows, Michael Eisenberg, who was the original investor in WeWork. And really that trained me, and I was in an environment where it was all about forward-looking and thinking about trends and investing in companies that were looking to solve future problems. And that really informed a lot of everything I did. Ultimately moved back to New York, and I knew the Schroen family socially. I helped them do some investing in tech companies.
In tech as opposed to
real estate. I was they used to call me the private equity arm, it was just me. And then ironically, when I left the Schroens, I started a company called Heritage Equity Partners, which was supposed to be a direct investment advisory firm helping other ultra-high net worth families invest in operating companies. But it was either the worst timing or the best timing for this fledgling young company. And
it was 2008?
2008. And within about 2 months, Bear Stearns collapsed, and most of the families that were going to invest with us in new deals asked for help restructuring. So I spent the first couple months dealing with things like structured products and other financial investments, and then towards the end of 2008, it was primarily real estate. And these were minority investors in projects all over Brooklyn, Queens. So it was very accidental that I got into real estate, and then took me about 1.5 years of doing deals, then ultimately putting my own money until I started calling myself a developer. So very much an accidental
What was your first
developer.
deal?
So my first deal was a building at 227 Grand Street. It's on the corner of Grand and Driggs. It's right across from the movie theater, except in those days the movie theater was just an empty yard with a lot of junk in it. And I knew some of the investors. I knew my current business partner, Michael Lichtenstein, was doing the construction. And there had been a downzoning, so the family that was also in the schmata business, who knocked down their building and dug a hole, didn't have the wherewithal to continue constructing or find the financing necessary. And I looked around Williamsburg. There was a very healthy rental market, really a strong environment of young people continuing to move into New York, looking for jobs, wanting to live in the neighborhood, and just a disconnect where many of the banks that had funded these projects were getting shut down by the FDIC. So, instead of telling my client to walk away, I ended up finding alternative sources of debt, restructuring the deal, and then going in with some of my own money. So that was my first. And today it's a 50-unit, building, residential and commercial, right on the corner of Grand and Driggs. So, and my office is in that building. So it's all come full circle.
City planner, tell us a little bit about your life and how you got involved with the real estate. From the soda business to the...
I never worked in the soda business.
I know, but you did work at the liquor store.
I did work at the liquor store. My parents had a liquor store in Midtown Manhattan, and even growing up on Long Island, I had this incredible affinity for Manhattan mostly, admittedly, and loved coming into the city. And when it came down to really figuring out what I wanted to do professionally, I was very, very attracted to being on the government side in planning. I just knew there was a lot of opportunity. I loved reading things about Manhattan, and found myself in graduate school, University of Michigan, and then made this great jump coming back home, and had a great career in city planning. I had an amazing run there. The last opportunity, of course, I really learned a lot about the real estate industry. I led the Brooklyn office of city planning for 6 years in this incredible time when Brooklyn was really, had a long way to go. We really understood all the opportunity at the end of the Giuliani administration. The city became safe. The city became a really great place to invest. I really understood the strength of the residential neighborhoods. I had moved to Park Slope a decade earlier, actually, so really understood why people found it really attractive to be in Brooklyn. And then, of course, when the Bloomberg administration settled in, I just started pitching ideas for how Brooklyn could grow, whether that be downtown Brooklyn, Greenpoint and Williamsburg, Park Slope. And I had this amazing opportunity where no one said that was a bad idea. Everybody just said, go. And there was incredible leadership in the Bloomberg administration, Dan Doctoroff and Amanda Burden, many of the teams. And we got a lot done in 6 years, really set the stage for Brooklyn to grow in a lot of neighborhoods. Listening to both Toby and then knowing what MaryAnne's been involved with, these were projects that really took a tremendous amount of work on the public side, but also the amazing synergy between the public side and the market. I mean, nothing in the planning world succeeds unless there's people that really believe in it on the private side. And then after that, of course, I left city planning and had this amazing opportunity to build Brooklyn Bridge Park, which I think is one of the city's most successful public-private models. Of course, there's a lot of public money in all of the amenities of the park, but all of the maintenance and operation is driven by 5 great real estate deals that really will continually to fund the park in perpetuity. So I think I've seen a lot of real estate on both sides.
And your current life?
My current life is running the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, which is really, to me, full circle, since I care so much about making sure downtown Brooklyn is as great as it can be. And now we're really focusing on the future, making sure it's as mixed use as can be, which really means focusing on jobs and office growth.
Now, I should have called this 3 Women Who Love Brooklyn, because you've spent most of your life. So how do you get involved with the real estate business?
Serendipity. I graduated from university and applied to a fellowship through the Urban Fellows Program.
But you were at a university up in the Bronx.
I was at Fordham.
Okay. How do you end up at Fordham? How do you decide?
I went to the school that gave me the most money, and so Fordham won.
Did you have
Scholarship
any idea that you were going to get involved with real estate when you were a kid?
Frankly, I don't even know if I knew the meaning of economic development. It was simply a recruitment tool the city was using to try to entice young people to come into public service. And it was a stipend, and it was both a summer and an academic year. And I qualified and won both, and came to New York on my way to law school. And
where were you going to go to law school?
I hadn't quite decided, but I was planning to stay in New York. So it would have been NYU, Columbia, or Fordham. And I enrolled in the Urban Fellows Program, and it's a program where you interview commissioners and you pick your agency. And I was bowled over by the professional nature of the Public Development Corporation.
But you were saying to me before in the green room, they had the best air conditioning unit?
It was really the air conditioning that closed me. It was the hot summer. The city was quite different than the city we know today. It was, frankly, the city spaces and the public buildings were really a mess. And so all of the places I really wanted to work were horrible physical plants. And so whether I was sitting in a hallway or dealing with a rodent problem, every agency I talked to said that I would get through the summer, but it would be rough. And I walked into public development, and it was air conditioned with carpet, and it was a corporation. There was a president.
How they deserve such amenities? I mean,
well, as you know, it was funded through land sales that it did on its own. So it was a quasi-public entity. It had a board of directors. And I was mesmerized by all of this professionalism and grown-up environment. And I thought, I have 2 fellowships. I can spend the summer here in a cool, air-conditioned office with carpeting and a very sophisticated vibe, and then I'll get serious about my career in September. And of course, because you were a paid fellow, there were no jobs. No one was allowed to hire anybody because the hiring freeze was still in effect. It was, post-fiscal crisis. And so if you were an urban fellow, you were a godsend to an agency. And it really had little to do with whether you knew what you were doing. It had more to do with the fact that you were free and you were paid for through a different fund inside of city government. So there was a feeding frenzy for urban fellows. And so everyone was trying to close you on why you should go to their agency. And so I remember being offered the position, and it was to shadow the president. And I was able to go to City Hall. Alaire Townsend was the deputy mayor. I remember being transfixed by her command of the material, her power base at City Hall, and her knowledge of the business. And I shadowed the president and spent a year on the executive floor, and then I decided I wanted to do deals. And I went from the executive floor down to the project management staff. And my first boss was Ellen Baer, who now runs the Hudson Square bid. And I worked in College Point, Queens. My job was to remove a squatter from the tow pound facility where the city was looking to build. And I remember physically going onto the
So you were involved with the Matones at that time with College Point?
College Point. It was a city industrial park where the city had to clear the property. And I literally remember going onto the site, and there was a squatter. He was about 80 years old. He was in a dress, and he had 6 dogs, and he lived in a trailer on the site, and my job was to convince him to relocate. And so in many ways it was an example of how the world of real estate in New York City has...
So how do you leave a public agency or public-private agency to go to an entrepreneur?
In many ways, what I'm doing is the very same thing, except on the private side. I mean, my transition from public development to private development was this epiphany that after 7 years, I realized I could be doing this on the private side, making some money and having the same satisfaction, but making the same impact on the skyline and the ground plane. And so that transition to go work with Bruce was born of the fact that I sat across from lots of developers during my time in government. And so working for a large real estate developer was, in many ways it was different, but the mission and the work was the same, except instead of focusing on job generation and tax base, you were looking at profit and IRRs and returns. It was just a different side of the coin. So my transition into private development was an easy one for me. I had obviously the public part of it down pat, and Bruce was a big believer in public-private partnerships, so that became a staple of the work that I did inside of Forest City.
So how long did you stay at Forest City?
23 years.
So at 23 years, certain people say maybe it's time to retire, maybe there's a change. How did you decide to get involved with two wonderful, successful guys, Levinson and Lapidus?
I had a great run at Forest City, and being CEO and stepping into Bruce Ratner's shoes was probably the most challenging thing I'd done in all of my career, because they're very big shoes to fill and nobody had ever had Bruce Ratner's job. And so I simply wanted to do it in the likeness of the way that Bruce built the company, and I enjoyed the 5 years that I sat in the corner office. At some point, the company went the way of becoming a real estate investment trust, and I am a hopeless developer first and foremost. And so running an operating company is great fun, and I enjoy the operating properties. But knowing that in my core, I'm a developer, being in a REIT in the public markets and trying to build long-term value is really a vast contradiction in terms, because the public markets are impatient. They want to know quarter over quarter what you're doing to deliver value. And the real estate development game is a long game, and I think it's a game best played in the private markets. And so I decided that there wasn't a job inside of Forest City, the New York company or the public company, that was of interest or that was really big enough for my ambition. And I, of course, wanted to continue to grow, and decided that it would be fabulous if I could launch a new platform, own a substantial piece of it, and find partners that could bring value to my platform. And so it was very important to me that I had a piece of it in terms of the culture, the ownership, and the direction of the platform. And when I met David Levinson to talk about that very opportunity, it became clear that he knew and understood the meaning of partnership. Obviously, he has a very successful company in L&L with Rob Lapidus, but they are not ground-up developers. And so there was an opportunity for us to create a new platform. And I was able to take some of the 5 most talented people in the industry with me and part on very good terms with Forest City, continue to work on their behalf at Pacific Park, Brooklyn, and have a full and open understanding that I would be launching a new company and a new brand.
So here's a question for both of you, and even you, even though you're not a developer, how hard is it to be a developer in 2018?
I think it's as hard as it's ever been. As the real estate markets go up and go down, sometimes banks are pulling back. Sometimes, I'm not a condo developer, but if you're a condo developer, your buyers are pulling back. I think, this is a really tough group of women. I've heard Regina's story, know all the work she's done, and of course MaryAnne. It takes a lot of fortitude. I think it's a moment now where, on some levels, in the areas where I play, in the projects I buy, a lot of my competitors have moved on because of things like tax abatement programs that weren't clear for a couple of years, the very difficult challenge of commercial development and lease up in the outer boroughs, and other government policies that have made it challenging, and then of course the debt market. So I think it's as difficult as it's always been, and it's as opportunistic as it's always been.
We have rising interest rates. Is it hard? I mean, you're a new kid on the block as a developer today, an independent developer. How hard is it going to be to get in the shovel and build the first property, especially with what Toby was saying, that you have different tax laws, you have other things, you have rising interest, you have others.
So I'll start by saying I slay dragons for a living, and whether I'm doing it at a public company or in the private sector, I think it's the same business in many ways. It's all I know, and I think I kind of do hard. If it's not complicated, I'm probably not that interested in it. I would say that the business is not easy, but it's really never been easy. And if you live through a recession or the Great Recession. In 2009, we had $500 million of equity plowed into Atlantic Yards. We had an arena to start construction. We had weeks within which to put it in the ground. We had 35 lawsuits. Our stock went to $3 a share, and we frankly didn't know if we'd make payroll. And when you go through that struggle and you live through that darkness and you come out the other end, I think you're better for it. And you know, we at the same time were building New York by Geary, and we had 900 units of rental product and huge exposure on real estate, and had to decide, do we continue to build the tower, or do we effectively decapitate Frank Geary's design? So I think I've been through difficult times in the industry, and I've come to believe that in downturns and corrections, there's great opportunity, and you simply have to know where to find it.
Are there opportunities, since all three of you are Brooklyn-centric at certain times or contemporary, are there still opportunities in Brooklyn?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Where in Brooklyn, okay? You know, certain people, you know, frequent guests on my shows, on my podcast, is John Catsimatidis, who is the ultimate optimist, who believes that Coney Island has great opportunities. You know, they opened up the amphitheater over there, they have the Cyclones over there, and John has made his commitment. He's building a luxury condominium with a trolley to pick up people to go to the train. That's, as you grew up not too far away, it is, as we would say in the firm, it's a schlep. It's an hour at least into Manhattan over there. Are there opportunities in Brooklyn, in the Coney Island area, or in other sections of Brooklyn today?
So I think it continues to be, you know, about commutability. We never, Michael, of course, discourage people from investing as far away from a subway as it is, because great cities need a lot of disparate views and people putting money in different neighborhoods. You know, I still follow the train lines. You know, I grew up on Flatbush. It was a really long schlep on the local trains to get to Manhattan. But I think you're seeing things shift around. Like if you look, for example, at East New York. I live in Kew Garden Hills. It's about 10 or 12 minutes by car to come down to Jackie Robinson. There are ways to get between Brooklyn and Queens through Maspeth and other parts of industrial Brooklyn. And I think you're going to see a lot more flow through different means of transportation and people moving between the boroughs. We have an amazing...
Do you think we need the BQX? Is that one of the important situations required to help Brooklyn grow?
We need to have more infrastructure. I mean, the one thing that I think has happened in the last decade is Brooklyn is coming into its own. There's over 2.5 million people living in Brooklyn already, but now what's really shifting is that there's its own economy is developing, and that's not only downtown Brooklyn and the rest of the Tech Triangle really becoming a legitimate competitor to, say, the Flatiron District or other places in Manhattan, but we have office development in the Gowanus, in Bushwick, in Williamsburg. We have people interested in working in all different places in Brooklyn, and so that means that we need more infrastructure. So we certainly advocate for the BQX because we need to look at the future. We need to look for what kind of infrastructure we need in the next 20 years.
But wouldn't you agree that the ferries have helped Brooklyn and the boroughs so much recently?
Ferries have helped all of the 5 boroughs and Roosevelt Island. If you think about what we built on Roosevelt Island and Cornell Technion.
Right, the Tata Center.
It's the Tata Innovation Center together with the Bloomberg Center. It's the connectivity is so obvious by water and by ferry. And we even used the waterways to bring materials over, which I think is another thing that New York City has yet to fully exploit, which is movement of goods and materials through the water, because we have something like 538 miles of waterfront if you string it all together.
You know, what about the borough that people don't really talk about? Do you see opportunities in Staten Island? I mean, you've never really gone to Staten Island to build, or, you know, there have been certain people who have been pioneers into Staten Island over the years, but it truly hasn't developed. Have you ever thought about Staten Island?
No, I see a lot of, you know, we talked before about workforce housing and other opportunities, but I think that there are more natural, easier commutes into the Rockaways. A little more optimistic about opportunities there than in Staten Island. But I'm sure there are others. Like we said, we never discourage development. So people should keep
even though you've
money.
spent too much time in Brooklyn, what's your thoughts about the Rockaways and Queens?
Never too much time in Brooklyn.
I love the Rockaways. You know, I'm from Atlantic Beach, so it was just a stone's throw away. And I think the redevelopment of Auburn over the past decade has really shown what the amenities can be like and how attractive it can be for so many different people to live in the Rockaways. In terms of economic development, the core has to really start to grow, and there needs to be private investment by the terminus of the railroad.
What about the Brooklyn Navy Yard and the Brooklyn Terminal Market in Industry City? How do you see that? Because you said to me prior to the show you were getting involved with certain near Industry City.
So I think part of the beauty of Brooklyn is that it's going from being a place people only live and then play to a place people work, which makes it a real city. And in each neighborhood, it's evolving. Like in the same way you have certain kinds of companies that took office space in the Plaza District, other companies in the Financial District. You're seeing that play out all over Brooklyn. You know, Regina mentioned Gowanus, so you have the amazing transformation of the Industry City done by, of course, owned by the Schroens and the Fruchthandlers, and then a lot of capital put in by Jamestown. And that's really opening all of that area up. You know, I spent a lot of time, we as a hotel owner were constantly buying furniture, and it's become a furniture destination. Pretty much every single, you know, Restoration Hardware just opened, and all the other major furniture providers all have outlets over there. Tremendous destination in terms of shopping throughout the borough, a lot of easy access to parking, and very much the kind of retail people love now. It's less a mall and more the ability to walk, and very low and very little residential development that's gone on. So I think every part of Brooklyn has a different growth story. What's been transformed, and if you haven't been, you should visit. As you walk through the buildings at Industry City, we still buy lights and other materials from those buildings, but on the ground floor, it's an amazing retail experience. So very, you know, I think tremendous example for the borough and the city on good economic development and the story of what happens next there over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of the community of residential, commercial, continuing to evolve.
What about the Army Terminal?
So I think that there's, you know, we see even at 25 Kent, and then I own some commercial space in Bushwick, there's a real wide diversity of companies that want to be here. Some of them are more industrial, some of them are light manufacturing. And for the borough to continue to achieve continued growth, there need to be many places for people to work. There's certain kinds of tenants that, you know, we're sending, for example, to the Navy Yard. They're at subsidized rent, much larger opportunities to expand, and all sorts of clothing manufacturing happening there. So I think that over the next 10 years, every one of those public spaces.
I think relating to that, I did a show a couple of months ago called Made in America. And I specifically tried to get people made in New York City. And what's being made in New York City is being made a lot in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is becoming made in Brooklyn over there in this situation. But I think, you know, what we're going to try to do on our second part of this is to talk about where we look at the other opportunities in New York City and where you see the future and the growth over there. So I'd like to thank Toby, Regina, MaryAnne, and I'll see you next week.